My name is Mike McLane, and I represent District 55 in the legislature, which includes a significant portion of Jackson County. And the Carries who are sitting to my right are constituents, and I became aware of the challenge that they had with having on their property a pond that was not put in pursuant to a permit. And so the Carries had went through a process to create the legal basis for them to be able to maintain the pond. And they live in rural Jackson County. You'll hear from him in a second. The bottom line is that they were not rewarded for doing the right thing, meaning that we have a situation in Oregon where we have older ponds that when the owner seeks to get them recognized under Oregon law or to remedy repairs or any of that sort of thing, they have to hide to do it, or they get penalized, meaning take out the pond, et cetera, et cetera. This catch-22 has led to sort of a disincentive. And the long and short of it is we have an opportunity to work on a bill this session that would create an opportunity for those who have these older ponds to go through a process where they could be registered and where in critical water areas or places where there are demands that would supersede it, that they would be able to release the water. And I don't want to go through all the details, but just to tell you, it is a real issue. It impacts the state, and we have folks who are impacted on it directly who tried to do the right thing. So without boring you any further, I would ask that you adopt the -1 amendments, which came pursuant to working with the ODFW and the Water Resources Department, along with the attorney for the Carries and some other interested parties. And the -1 appears to be the consensus on what works. Now, that being the case, Representative Marsh just told me that the Medford Water Commission may have a couple of additions. And my understanding is they were good with the -1, but maybe they have adjustments. But I don't understand that they don't oppose the -1 amendment, but perhaps they have an amendment or two. And Farm Bureau, I was just told, may have a word or two tweak. So there was no better place than the Rules Committee under the leadership of Jennifer Williamson to make those tweaks. So my request is you adopt the -1 amendments, move it to rules, where hopefully you, Mr. Chair, will dive in with both hands and make sure that the water politics actually can be calmed, and we can have some resolution on at least one water issue this year that is consensus. So with that, I want to introduce the Carries from Jackson County.
If you wouldn't mind, are you able to stay a few more minutes in case the committee has questions of the amendment? Or
Certainly.
Okay.
Yes, I will, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Carries, my husband John Carey. In 2010, John and I rented the property on Butte Falls Highway. After renting for about 4 years, we bought the property in 2014. In February of 2016, I called the water master to inquire about the extent of our water rights. only to be informed that we had no water rights, our pond was illegal, and had to be removed at our expense. All of this came as quite a shock to us. As renters, we understood the pond was ours to use for any purpose and to any extent that we chose. When the time came to buy, I researched the county records. The assessor's page states lake on property on the front page. The historical files littered with references to the large pond. How could it be that such property records would not lead to the discovery that the pond was illegal? But that was the case, and unwitting, we moved forward with the purchase. I contacted the local water master in 2016, asking about our water rights. It broke my heart. We invited the water master to our property to see the pond for himself. We informed that it was unregistered and therefore illegal. It must be drained, and we are to cover the entire expense. It was our understanding that removal of the pond will likely cost us at least $25,000, and the effect on the value of our property of the pond if removed is likely to be very detrimental. The pond is the most enchanting feature of the property. The wildlife that comes, it's extensive. They've been relying on this pond for 4 decades, I'm sorry. It was built in the 1970s. It's been on the property the whole time, never changed in 40 years, according to the neighbors and other people in the area. In the 90s, property owners were given the opportunity to register ponds, but the then owners were living out of state, and they didn't even know this opportunity was available. And the property and the pond were left as is, where is, for the next 20 some odd years until we are to today without a change of ownership. And the pond went undetected by the water master or anyone else until my phone call. And they say it's a complaint-driven system, but nobody complained. I just asked, what are my water rights? And now they want to take away my pond. Since then, we've worked diligently to comply with state law. We live in the Big Butte watershed, so there are no irrigation rights available. There's no new water appropriations where I live. But this pond has been there for 40 years. Nobody said a word. Nobody upstream. There's no stream. There's just I'm sorry. The main benefit for the community in allowing the registration of historic use ponds is to also serve as a valuable resource during fire season. We received letters of support from the local Fire District 3, as well as the Oregon Department of Forestry, requesting that our pond remain as a water resource, as it's large enough and easily accessible for helicopters to refill their dip buckets multiple times. Tanker trucks can drive right up and fill up with water. Fire agencies have limited access to water in rural areas such as the Big Butte watershed, and our pond could serve multiple agencies at one time. All in all, almost everyone I've talked to along the way, from state agencies to local politicians to citizens, believe that historic use ponds are a valuable community resource and that property owners should be able to register them and maintain them so a database of accessible water is established. Without the passage of this bill, the continued existence of unregistered ponds will serve no purpose for the community. And the current ideology of let sleeping dogs lie is not helping anyone. Ignoring a problem is never the solution. House Bill 3421-1 allows the existence of historic use ponds in areas where the appropriation of new water rights is next to impossible and affords property owners a solution to a problem that exists for hundreds, if not thousands, in a similar situation. Yeah, just thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. Thank you, Senator McLane.
Jonathan, did you want to have it?
John, did you want to?
No, not really. It's the main thing is we didn't buy our property for the double-wide mobile that was put on there in 1995. We bought it for the nature, the beauty, and the lake that was there. And I mean, elk come and nest 2 times a year on the other side of my lake. I mean, it's something that is in tune with all the animals in our forest. If that is removed, there is no large water source like that for another 20, 30 miles. So they're going to have to change their migration patterns. They're going to change everything. I mean, it'll change our forest. It'll change. Hunters won't be able to hunt where they were hunting before because the water where those animals were getting before aren't going to be there anymore. So it makes no sense to me to take something that's doing no harm and creating so much benefit just because a piece of paper says that this is what the law is and it needs to be this way. There needs to be some room for creating what is legal and what is proper, or what is right for the times, or what is right for the situation. You know, It seems the only argument we ever had through this whole thing is that we want it removed because it says you have to have it removed. They never said we want it removed because we need the water somewhere downstream, because if they let it downstream, it would go down into the Rogue River and out into the ocean, not producing any power anywhere, not producing any irrigation anywhere, not producing anything. The water's so minuscule that it wouldn't add enough water to the water table to help fish migrate. There is no benefit to removing it. There is so much benefit to keeping it. And it's not just for my sake, it's not just for my wife's sake, it's for the entire area's sake. It makes no sense for my neighbors to not have possible fire suppression water around when it was there for 40 years, and now all of a sudden, because a piece of paper somewhere says it should be removed, it gets removed. You know, what happens if a forest fire starts in my forest right after they drain it? Can I come back and sue somebody? Because the water that would have put out the fire around my property would have saved my property, but now that water's gone. And now it can't? I don't, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, one lawsuit at a time.
Representative,
Yeah.
if I could get Jonathan to state his full name for the record before
I'm
we move
Jonathan
on.
Paul Carey.
Yeah, thank you.
And so I'd sum it up, Chair and members of the committee, that there are significant community benefits for having these ponds registered and subject to regulation, such as releasing the water when subordinating to senior water rights, et cetera. So we're not asking for an old pond like this. And this bill would not apply to new ponds. If you built a pond after 2000, the year 2000, then you should have known better. These are the older ponds. So it would allow a process to create them, to get them registered, legal, and they would only become legal if they complied with law regarding being able to release, all that stuff. And then we have the community benefits of having a wildlife habitat, water for firefighting, et cetera. I think Sabrina said it best, that it's not a good solution to just ignore this. And that's what we've done for a long time in Oregon. The only people who show up on the radar and are asked to have their ponds removed are the people who actually walk through the front door and try to do the right thing. With that, we can answer any questions.